The coffee was still too hot when Bridget told me to pack. 6:40 in the morning. I remember because I just looked at the kitchen clock, the one Arthur hung crooked 19 years ago, and I never fixed because crooked things become yours after a while. And Bridget walks in, robe tied neat, hair already done at that hour. Who does their hair at 6:40 a.m.? And she sets her phone face down on my counter like she owns the marble. And she says, "Margaret, we've been talking, and it just makes more sense if the house comes to us. Comes to us." Like the house was a stray cat wandering toward the warmer porch. I didn't say anything. That was my first mistake. Or maybe my last one before I stopped making them. I just held the mug. My hands, God, my hands were so steady. Steadier than they had any right to be. And somewhere under my ribs, something cold and clean clicked into place. Not anger, not yet. Just a door opening. "There's a lovely facility out past Tybee," she went on, calm as ever, calm as a woman reading a grocery list. "Bright rooms, and honestly, it frees the place up. Mom and Dad will take the upstairs, my sister Colette wants the garden room, and Daniel and I will finally have space to grow. Space to grow. In my house. The house Arthur built." I want you to feel what I felt right then, because I think a lot of you have felt some smaller version of it. It's not a hot feeling. People think betrayal burns. It doesn't. It's cold. It spreads down from the throat to the stomach. It makes the room very quiet and very far away, like you're watching your own kitchen through a window from across the street. I looked at Bridget, and I looked at the doorway behind her, where my son Daniel was standing. Standing, saying nothing. 41 years old, my boy. The one I taught to tie his shoes on these very steps. And he wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked at the floor like the floor owed him an explanation. And that was the cut. Not her. Him. Here's the thing I knew that they didn't. No, I knew. And this is where I need you to lean in because this is the part that mattered. The house was never going to be simple to take. Let me back up. Quick. Arthur died 4 years ago. Heart. In the garden he loved, holding a tomato plant of all things. And before he went, he did something I didn't fully understand at the time. He put the house into what's called an irrevocable trust. Now, most people hear trust and their eyes go soft and sleepy. So, let me make this useful to you because one day this could be your kitchen. A revocable trust you can change, undo. The person who made it keeps control. An irrevocable trust is different. Once it's set, the assets inside it aren't really owned by any single person the way a deed is owned. They're held, protected, and critically, you cannot just sign a house out of one because your daughter-in-law decided the upstairs would suit her parents. Arthur, my crooked clock-hanging Arthur, had quietly made the house bulletproof. And I was the trustee and the beneficiary both. Bridget didn't know that. She thought there was a deed in a drawer with my name on it. One signature away from being hers. So, when she stood in my kitchen at 6:40 in the morning and told me to pack, I made a decision. I decided to let her think she was winning. "All right," I said. Just that. "All right." You should have seen her face soften with victory. People who manipulate, they relax the second you go limp. It's almost the only honest thing about them, that relief. She actually patted my shoulder. Patted it. "You'll see it's for the best," she said. "I'm sure I will." I thought. Now I'm going to tell you what I did over the next 11 days, and I'm telling you on purpose, because if you ever find yourself across the kitchen from someone calm and smiling who wants what's yours, the worst thing you can do is shout. Shouting tells them where your hands are. Quiet keeps your cards in your lap. First thing, that same morning, I drove out to the diner on Abercorn, the one with the bad pie and the good booths, and I called Eleanor Pruitt. Eleanor is an estate attorney, sharp as a tack. We'd known each other since the choir days. I told her everything. The robe, the facility, the upstairs for the parents, Colette and her garden room, the patting of my shoulder. Eleanor was quiet a long moment. Then she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Margaret, they're not asking you for the house. They're informing you. And people who inform you instead of asking, they've already decided your furniture." Furniture. Yes, that's exactly what it had felt like for 2 years, and I'd never had the word. And here's the first lesson Eleanor handed me, the one I'm handing you. An irrevocable trust generally protects the home from being seized, sold, or signed away on a whim, even by family, and even in many cases, from certain creditors and care costs down the line. Arthur hadn't just left me a house, he'd left me a wall. I just hadn't known to lean on it. So I started gathering. I'm not a detective. I'm a 58-year-old widow who volunteers at the library twice a week. But it's amazing what you find when you stop being furniture and start being a person again. I pulled my bank records, and there it was, in black and gray columns I'd been too trusting to read. Over 2 years I had lent Bridget money. $8,000 for a car repair that I now doubt ever happened. $12,000 for Colette's tuition. $15,000 in one transfer for a kitchen renovation at their old place. A kitchen I was never once invited to see. $35,000, roughly, gone, in increments small enough that I told myself each one was just love. That's how it works. They don't take it in one grab. They take it in spoonfuls and let you call each spoonful generosity. I wrote down every transfer, date, amount, the little memo line. I made copies. I'm telling you this part slow because I want you to hear the discipline in it. I didn't confront. I documented. There's a difference, and the difference is everything. A confrontation is a feeling. A document is a fact. And in the end, facts are the only thing that ever rescued me. Then the strangest piece fell into my lap, and this is where my stomach dropped clean through the floor. Bridget left a folder on the dining table. Just left it, careless, sure of herself. And inside, a power of attorney form with my name typed on it. And a signature at the bottom. My signature. Except I never signed it. I stood there in the dining room, Arthur's dining room, the table he sanded by hand, holding a piece of paper that said I had handed this woman the legal right to act for me, to sign for me, to move money and, I have no doubt, eventually to try and pry at the trust itself. And I had never touched a pen to it. I want to be careful how I say this next part because it's the legal heart of it, and I want you to actually learn something you can use. Forging someone's name on a power of attorney isn't a family squabble. It isn't she got a little ahead of herself. Creating or using a falsified legal document that grants control over another person's affairs is fraud. And depending on the jurisdiction, it can be a serious crime. The smiling and the robe and the it just makes more sense. None of that survives contact with a forged signature. None of it. I photographed the folder. I put it back exactly as I found it, corner to corner. And then I sat down in Arthur's chair. And I'll be honest, I cried a little. Not from sadness. From the awful relief of finally seeing the whole shape of the thing. You can't fight a shadow, but now I could see it. All of it. Every edge. Eleanor took the photographs, the bank records, the trust documents, and she laid them out on her desk like a hand of cards, and she said, "Margaret, you're not the victim here anymore. You're the one holding the deck. Now we let them play the hand they've already started." The family dinner was Bridget's idea. Of course it was. She said it for that Sunday, said we should make the transition feel warm. Her parents drove in, Colette came, already eyeing my garden room through the window like a buyer at an open house. Daniel sat at the foot of the table, Arthur's table, and still wouldn't look at me. Bridget had even printed something, a little stack of papers by my plate. "Just formalities, Margaret," she said, sliding them over with that calm, that endless calm. "Sign these and we'll have you settled out at Tybee by the end of the month." The whole table looking at me. The mother smiling. Colette's fork paused midair. And I felt strange to say it, I felt almost tender toward Arthur right then. Like he was standing crooked in the doorway with the clock under his arm. I took a slow breath. I picked up the papers. I set them back down. Before I sign anything, I said, I'd like to share a few documents of my own. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't shaking inside. I was. But my voice came out level, came out quiet. I'd learned that much. Quiet keeps your cards in your lap. I laid down the trust first. I explained slow, the way Eleanor explained it to me, that the house sits in an irrevocable trust established by Arthur. That it cannot be signed over, cannot be sold out from under me, cannot be willed away by anyone at this table. That the facility paperwork by my plate was, legally speaking, a stack of nothing. Bridget's calm flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. Then I laid down the bank records. $35,000 in transfers, dated, documented. And here Eleanor had taught me the move that turned the whole table cold. Characterized now, formally, in writing, as loans. Not gifts. Loans, with a repayment expectation on record. I'll be needing that back, I said. There's a schedule. Eleanor drew it up. Colette set her fork down. And then? Then I laid down the photograph of the forged power of attorney. Face up, right next to Bridget's printed formalities. The room went so quiet I could hear the crooked clock ticking in the next room. This is my signature, I said. Except it isn't. I never signed this. And I think everyone at this table should understand exactly what a forged power of attorney is, because I had to learn it myself this week. It's not paperwork. It's a felony. Bridget's mother stopped smiling, and Daniel, my Daniel, finally looked up. Looked at his wife, looked at the photograph, looked at me. And I watched something break open behind his eyes, watched 2 years of small spoonfuls suddenly add up in his head all at once, and he whispered, Bridge, what did you do? Not a question, really. He already knew. He'd known and not known the way you do when loving someone has cost you your eyes. Here's what I didn't do. I didn't scream. I didn't throw them out into the street that night, though Lord knows the script in my chest wanted to. Revenge, the loud kind, the satisfying kind. It feels good for about 4 seconds, and then it hands the other person their excuse. They get to say you're hysterical. They get to make themselves the victim of your volume. I did it the other way, the quiet way, the way that lasts. Eleanor filed to formally recall and document every dollar as debt. We turned the forged power of attorney over to the proper authorities, because some things you don't get to keep inside a family. Some things are bigger than a kitchen. The facility paperwork went in the trash where it belonged, and Bridget's parents, her sister, all those people who'd already measured my rooms for their furniture, they drove home that night to wherever they'd come from, and the upstairs stayed empty, and the garden room stayed mine. Bridget left within the month. Not to my house, out of Daniel's life, mostly, once the legal weight of what she'd done settled fully on her shoulders. I won't pretend I shed a tear. Daniel, that's harder. He sat with me on Arthur's steps a week later, the steps where I taught him his shoes, and he cried like he was 8 years old, and he said he was sorry. He was so sorry. He'd told himself it was easier to keep the peace than to see what was right in front of him. And I let him say it. I didn't forgive him all at once. Forgiveness isn't a switch. Anyone who tells you it is has never actually had to do it. But I let him sit there. That's where it starts, on the steps, quiet. The clock still crooked. I look at it every morning now, 6:40 or whenever, and I think about the woman who stood in this kitchen and told me to pack. Calm as ever. She was so sure the soft thing in front of her was a weak thing. That was her mistake, the whole entire mistake right there. Soft isn't weak. Soft is just a wall that hasn't been leaned on yet. And Arthur, bless him, my crooked clock man, he built me a good one. I just had to learn to stand against it.